Hello, honors biology students. I am here to walk you through one of the monohybrid cross genetics problems. The one we're going to go through is actually number 11 in your worksheet packet. So you can just copy my work. I'm giving you this one. This one's a freebie, okay? So the steps to solving a genetics problem. So whenever you get a genetics problem, I want you to go through these steps. Number one, read the problem all the way through. A lot of students will just read half of it and then forget that there was a second half to the problem. So be sure to read the problem all the way through. Number two, determine what is being asked. Different genetics questions ask different things, as you will see. So you need to make sure you know exactly what the question is asking. Number three, make a key. I will give you examples of what I mean by this. Number four, make the cross. So this is talking about the Punnett square. So in those monohybrid crosses, it's just going to be that 4 square Punnett square. Number five, take one trait at a time. This has more to do when we get to dihybrid crosses, because monohybrid crosses are always one trait. So you don't have to worry about number five too much yet. Okay, so here's our practice problem. Let's read this. White fruit color is dominant to yellow fruit color in summer squash. If a pure white plant is crossed with a pure yellow plant, what are the possible genotypes of the F1? Then it's asking, if members of the F1 generation are crossed, what are the possible genotypes and phenotypes of the F2 generation? Okay, so first, we read it through. So we're kind of like, okay, I kind of know what they're asking for. The second thing is to make a key. So this would be an example of your key. Okay, so we're going to pick a letter to indicate these different colors. So it says white fruit color is dominant to yellow fruit color. So in this key, we've decided to make W the letter for fruit color. And remember, we're going to use the same letter for both the dominant and the recessive trait. But if it's the dominant version, we're going to use a capital letter. And if it is recessive, we use lowercase. So for it to be recessive, for the phenotype to be, show the recessive trait, it has to be homozygous recessive, right? The reason there's a line right here is because this could be a capital W or it could be a lowercase w, right? So you technically could have big W, little w, or you could have big W, big W. Again, isn't that drawing tool just amazing? Okay, so that's what the W with the line underneath means. Whether it has a recessive or a dominant allele here, it is going to be white. So this is our key for the problem to remind us that the dominant allele is white, the recessive allele or version of the trait is yellow. So the next step is to do the Punnett square. And actually, well, first we need to figure out what it's asking us to do. So it's asking the genotypes of F1. So we have to look at the parent generation, and it's saying pure, it said pure white plant. And we talked about how if it says pure, that means it's homozygous, and white is dominant. So if it's a pure white plant, it's going to be capital W, and it's crossed with a pure yellow, which means it's homozygous. And anything that shows the recessive trait, right? If it has the phenotype of the recessive trait, it's always going to be homozygous recessive, right? So the initial cross, the parents are capital W, lowercase w, homozygous dominant, crossed with a homozygous recessive. So this will show the genotypes of the F1. So we're going to put one of the parents on the top, and it doesn't matter which one you put where. It's going to give you the same results. Okay, so you're going to put capital W here for this parent. And then on the other side, you're going to do the homozygous recessive, little w. Okay, so you've set this up. Okay, then you're going to bring the alleles down, right? So you're going to bring down that capital W, that dominant allele, bring over the lowercase or recessive allele. So this first genotype for this generation is going to be heterozygous. And what do you think the other ones are going to be? They're all heterozygous because look, one parent, remember you get one allele from one parent and the other allele from the other. And if one parent can only donate dominant alleles and one parent can only give you recessive alleles, all those children are going to be heterozygous. They're going to get one dominant and one recessive allele. So the possible genotypes of the F1 is going to be, oh, let's move my face. Put me right in the middle. 100% heterozygous, right? All of these are the same, 100%. That's for the genotypes. What about the phenotype? Same, right? If your genotype are all the same, your phenotype is going to be all the same. So what is it going to be? White fruit color, right? Okay, so we answered the first part of the question, but that was just the first part. Then it says, if members of the F1 generation are crossed, what are the possible genotypes and phenotypes of the F2 generation? So now we're going to cross those heterozygous, right? So this is the cross. This is what they're asking for. So this was the children of the F1 generation. So it says if members of the F1 generation are crossed, these are those children of those pure plants, the pure yellow and the pure white. What are the possible genotypes and phenotypes? So we have two heterozygous individuals, right? Let's move my face again. Okay, so again, this is the F2 generation because this is the F1 generation. So this is F2. So set up the Punnett square. You have one parent on the top, one parent on the side. You have the dominant allele and recessive allele. Dominant allele, recessive allele. And again, it doesn't matter what order you put them in, as long as you have one parent on one side and one parent on the other. You bring the letters down. So in this case, you have a capital W, which is homozygous dominant. This one, you get capital, you get a dominant allele and a recessive allele. This one, you get a dominant allele and a recessive allele. And look over here, we get two recessive alleles, so homozygous recessive. So we did the Punnett square. We're done, right? Okay. Bye. No. Read the question. What are the possible genotypes and phenotypes? So don't just give me this. You need to tell me what the possibilities are. What's that ratio? So for the genotype, it's going to be that 1 to 2 to 1 ratio that we talked about in the other video, right? We have one homozygous dominant, two heterozygous individuals, and one homozygous recessive. There's 3 different types of genotypes here. And the ratio of those genotypes is 1 to 2 to 1. What about phenotypes? What do you think? 3 to 1, right? 3 white to 3 yellow. Okay. You don't have to rewrite the key for different parts of the question. This key is going to stay the same. If you had another question like next that was about these same fruits and the white and the yellow, you don't have to write a key every time if the previous question is about the same thing and the different parts of the question is the same thing. Okay, so that's it. If you have, again, this week, guys, if you have questions, please don't get overwhelmed. Send me an email, use the discussion boards, use the Zoom calls. I also set up that Flipgrid if you want to, do an example of you doing one and I can comment, make sure you're doing it right. Okay, guys, so don't give up. We're going to get through this. This is all we're doing this week is practicing with these. We are going to master monohybrid crosses. All right, guys, good luck.